Hey, welcome to Adventures from Behind the Stream, or Behind the Adventures from the Stream. Hey, I'm Joe. We're going to go back into talking about some cool stuff in Foundry, Virtual Tabletop, and the low fantasy gaming system. Now, if you saw the last one, we are definitely approaching this. When I say we, I guess I mean me. I'm Joe. We are definitely approaching this from the newbie standpoint. I know just enough about Foundry to be a little dangerous in it, and I know just enough about low fantasy gaming to know that it's named low fantasy gaming. So we're going to go right into that. Before we get started, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we do here at Adventures from the Shed, Adventures from the Stream. We have an audio podcast that we've been running since about 2014, and we've got hundreds of hours of stuff to listen to there. Just check out adventuresfromtheshed.com. Of course, find us on Facebook, wherever you get your podcasts from. You can find the audio version of our podcasts. We played a lot of different games there. Just recently, especially with the COVID situation, we have gone online. We've got new things going on with Facebook streaming, YouTube streaming, starting this little sidebar here thing with Twitch with Behind the Stream. And I think we're just going to have a whole lot of fun keeping this going forward. Hey, welcome to the folks who have joined on Twitter. I see 57AV3, Chobojan, and that's Jason. Hi, Jason. Wikisnapper from the Discord at the Low Fantasy Gaming. Welcome. We are going to do a little shout out to those who do the stuff that I am bringing to you. Foundry Virtual Tabletop, I mentioned. This is their website. A self-hosted, modern, and developer-friendly role-playing platform. I will go, yes, exactly. I find it to be modern, and it's definitely user-friendly. I'm not a developer, but I can tell you it's user-friendly. It's a whole lot of fun, and I actually self-host my Foundry Virtual Tabletop, so I can attest to it being self-hostable. In the background, you'll typically hear some music I use from Thessalian Studios. A lot of really good royalty-free music to use if you happen to be making money off it or just want to help them move forward with what they do. Go ahead and send them a donation. They have donation information. And if you happen to use their music in YouTube or other places, they can hook you up with a license so you don't get any copyright infringement stuff. Great things to look forward to there. And there is the very cool, of course, I scrolled past the beginning here, but Low Fantasy Gaming, look at this cool deluxe edition cover for the PDF that I was hooked up with from the friendly folks at Low Fantasy Gaming. That guy right there at the bottom, Steven, he sent this to me, and this part of our light and fun reading for this evening. I am going to go right now over to our Foundry Virtual Tabletop. If you watched us last time, you know this is kind of where we left off, which I had created a dude. Technically, I had created a guy, and that's under actors here. I had created new guy, and when I had a whole lot of problems, I said, I'm not sure if this is working right, so I'm going to create a newer guy. That's what this one is over here. And in looking at the monsters and stuff, or I should say the non-player character actors, I found one that was just a bandit cultist, dragged that one out onto the screen, and I was playing around with that. So it's kind of trying to learn what's going on both on Foundry and in Low Fantasy Gaming. Let me just go back to where I was to give you a little heads up into a couple of things I want to talk about in Foundry today. Last time we talked, I had in my modules, I had loaded the module for pop out, which is what gives you the option to pop these windows out, and that makes a separate browser window that you can manipulate, drag to another monitor, do what have you. And I had also put on one of the ones I use actively here. The screen I'm using right down here is a touchscreen monitor, and Touch VT allows you to use your touchscreen monitor, kind of like a tablet. I can use, two fingers, pinch and zoom. I can tap on things, tap and drag, etc. Pretty cool. I don't have to reach for the mouse all the time. And One of the things that helps me with is I can keep my mouse on one screen and manipulate the map on a separate screen. You might see advantages there where I can be clicking through some browser tabs on one window, or maybe some notes I've got open somewhere else, and still be able to manipulate a token in Foundry. It's pretty cool. So those are the module settings I started with last time. I want to bring up a couple more that I'm going to add into here based on what we have used in Adventures from the Stream on our every other Monday night stream, which is currently the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition in the cool world of Corageous. We use a whole lot of these modules you see here to kind of streamline things in Dungeons & Dragons to make sure we don't spend too much time with rolling, checking what the roll did, and adding up the numbers, etc. We have streamlined the heck out of the DM's roll, where he can click a target, go to his monster, choose the monster's skill, feature, whatever it is. It rolls. If it hits, it does damage. If it misses, it skips right over and then goes on to the next thing. It's really a really cool thing to keep combat moving. We'll see how much more we can get out of automation within Low Fantasy Gaming System. For now, I just want to show you a couple more cool things, like I said, about the interface, where you can manipulate it a little bit. One of the things you may notice is in Foundry on its own, there isn't a dice tray. If you're familiar with Roll20.net, there's a dice icon up in the on the left-hand side, I think it is, towards the bottom. You click that, it brings up this whole table of things you can do. There isn't what I would call an equivalent in Foundry. However, being developer-centric here, so many people have written these really cool modules to add in. I'm going to add in the dice tray module. In addition to that, I like to see the dice. This Dice So Nice module gives you 3D dice to work with, plus you can do some really neat things with the 3D dice. So I'm going to put those two in there. I'm going to click Save Module Settings. This is going to reload the map. This happens quite frequently if you're changing modules, because it has to reload the language, the libraries, the stuff behind the scenes. Now, down on the lower right-hand corner, you can see the dice tray in the bottom right. So say now I want to roll D6s. I'm going to click 2 of those and then hit roll. And the 3D dice I put together roll right on my screen. I get a little dice noise. It's kind of cool. And they will automatically disappear. There are settings around that, settings around how loud they roll, settings around colors and everything. And just to give you an idea of what that is, I'm going to open that up. But to give you the overall here, we added 2 modules. That's Dice Tray. That's the one that gives you the tray and allows you to make that roll. And then it was Dice So Nice, which is the 3D dice themselves. Now we're going to go into our settings and look at those module settings. First thing right on the top is, this is alphabetical, by the way. Kind of easy if you happen to remember the names of your modules. So Dice So Nice is alphabetically the top one for me now, so it's the first one here. You can see right on this screen there are several different things to choose from. I don't think I changed anything in this screen. What I will change, however, is under the My Dice settings. This is the cool part, especially if you're a dice freak. I've got so many dice. It's probably the only thing I'll try to one-up other folks when it comes to D&D. Yeah, you've got a lot of dice. Well, I do too, so there. I've got a crap ton of dice sitting in my shed. You know those Chinese food restaurant soup containers, like a quart or something? I've got like 3 or 4 of those just filled with random dice, plus other stuff that I actually use. I can't do that anymore on this whole virtual thing, so we've got these 3D dice. Were really cool, and check out all the different looks you can have just in presets. In faces, you can make them, I picked a black, okay. You can make rainbow, it just has rainbow dice. You can go with damage type, lightning, and look at the dice have the lightning in it, and they're kind of translucent, really cool stuff. If we go down to this is what I was looking for the theme, the Foundry theme. And you look, that has a very similar look to the Foundry die right up here in the top left. That's one of their icons for a logo. Really cool stuff. You can go in and change it to whatever you like. Some of them might not be as easy to read, like this Radiant one. It is nice and bright. But one of the cool things about this is regardless of what the dice look like on the table, if you like the way they look, you're still going to get the roll in the chat window. So you can clearly read it, even if the dice are kind of fancy and you might not get the look you want for readability. You can get the look you want for visibility, for how cool they are on the table. So I'm going back to what I had because I feel like the black dice with the white writing is easy to read when they roll quick on the screen and just sit there for a little bit. Again, you can see right here in the list other things you can pick. You can even tell it that the dice themselves are either plastic, metal, glass, wood, or chrome. What are they rolling on? That's on here somewhere. Oh, I think it's on the other one. I think it's felt, etc. So I'm going to go back here. Cool stuff here, right? The next, dice tray. Now, if you see the big difference, dice tray has everything right on its face, and you don't have to change a lot. So with dice tray, you're either enabling it or not enabling it. Bam. That is the easy kind of setting for a module. And yeah, we'll have to do a full-on dice battle and post our collections, like you mentioned there. And oh gosh, I'm gonna show off a Dice Addiction. Just right next to me, I have what was kind of neat. Somebody who may remember this better than me, when it comes to wedding anniversaries, I want to say it may have been the 15th or something, but there's one for brass. My wife got me a solid brass D20. It's really cool. It's also very loud, so that one I keep handy, of course. And I'm sure plenty of other folks have the old chainmail dice bag. Cool thing. And then Think Geek years ago had a D20 that would, I don't know if I can get it to light up because the batteries are most, there it is. I don't know if you can see the little bit of flashing in there. This one might be better. What I really like though is some obscure dice. I really like me some obscure dice. And out in the actual shed, I have dice of the likes that help you make dungeons on the fly. You roll a d6 and it tells you whether the stairs go up or down, the hallway turns left or right, if there's a door, if the door's locked. And those are some really cool things. But yes, dice, very much. Jason's, yeah, he spends all his money right back into the games. I work in tech, and I have to say my money goes into games too. So we have that's a wrap up here on what we had for the modules that were added in. Again, the 3D dice so you can see them. Always cool to see your dice rolling. And then the dice tray to make it easy to grab a handful of dice and throw them on the table. Not knowing what I did there for sure, I'm going to hit save in case I did something that I can remember was good. And here I'm just going to go right back to the chat window and again just show you what that looks like. So one of the things that will happen in the Low Fantasy Gaming, when you're rolling up that character, you can roll 4d6 and hit that roll button. And man, I probably just wasted an okay roll here. But we'll get into reading the Low Fantasy Gaming PDF. I kind of want to split this stream into a bit of the Foundry virtual tabletop and then some of the Low Fantasy Gaming stuff. And I'm going to do a little bit of a crossfade between them, mainly by showing what little I've learned of the how Low Fantasy interacts in Foundry. So we've got that piece there. When it comes to adding in a couple of more modules. So now we are on the path of still just a handful of modules. So we've got the 2 dice modules, we've got the pop-out module, and we've got the touch VTT. Again, I try to keep it simple. One of the things you'll see when you're reading about Foundry and modules, almost all of the complex module makers say, if there's a problem with the module, it's probably another module messing it up, right? So the more you have, the more likely they are to interfere with each other. Because although there's a lot of really good stuff out there, I'm sure most of the people developing are like me. You're not really a professional developer. Therefore, you're not writing the best code. You're writing what does good enough to work, and that may conflict with with what someone else does. In that respect, it's a good idea to keep an eye on them. I'll mention one other thing, and this comes from my IT background here. I'm going to go back into manage modules. I have found some really cool modules that unfortunately developers aren't keeping up with. And when that happens, Foundry is really nice in telling you, look, there's a compatibility risk. What that means is the last time the developer said it was good with a certain version did not include the current version. So that means it may or may not work. And I have found some of those work, but I've decided for myself, especially since I do a lot of this live on a stream, I'm going to leave out the ones that have the compatibility risk, mainly because I want to take less chances on, well, frankly, screwing up what the hell I'm doing. So I want to mention that there. It doesn't mean you can't use it. It's just a risk that there may be a problem. And I think I'll mention one other thing with the modules, and I can do this by logging out and going back to the setup here, which I don't remember if we looked at last time for sure, except to show that I was loading the LFG system. One thing that I think is really important is if you look in the add-on modules, you can see right on the screen here on the right-hand side, there's a check update for each individual one. But what's really neat, I like this little button down here that says update all. It's going to go through all the modules I have, and if the developer has something new, it's like you can see it right up here. This one had an update, but it couldn't be installed. This one has an update, it was installed, etc., etc. I like to keep the software I'm using up to date. I'm from that world in IT where that's what I'd like to do. So I'll just do it. And then if I find there's a problem or something vanished in a newer version, then I'll go figure out what the problem is, etc. But you can see here, this is just from, oh gosh, when was the last time I ran this? On the 3rd, so 4 or 5 days ago. There was a bunch of updates, which means to me, this is really good. Developers are staying on top of the modules they're making, and they're all getting ready for the inevitable Foundry leap from 0.7.9 to 0.8. something. Really looking forward to that. It's beta, so I don't want to use it on the stream. However, really looking forward to updates and changes because this is a great piece of software. So back to the LFG world, go back into the Game Master account. You know what? I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to go back to the setup here. We didn't talk about players, and I think it's probably worth doing, and that's not in here, Joe. That's in a different spot. I actually think it's in the world. Let me open that back up. And we'll go into here. You don't need no stinking players. We've got the manage players. There it is. This is really cool. Another really cool feature of Foundry. And Foundry, actually, let me create an additional user here, and player who messes things up. How about that? You give them something to log in with, like a password of oops, and then you assign them their role. And we'll see at some point when we're messing around with Foundry that these different roles mean different things in the game. Some of them are kind of obvious. So first off, no role is really just a viewer. You can have somebody come in and just view your game. Kind of neat. Then player, your typical player, they can control their own character, and in some cases they can view and see information about other characters, and then have very limited view into actors or monsters, non-player characters that they don't own, that they don't have visibility to. So they're very limited view. If you're a regular player and the DM throws that kobold out onto the map, the best you can really do is look at the token. You can't see much more than that. And then there's trusted, which is another level up. It's like a trusted player. You may want to be able to move around other players' tokens, not just their own. That maybe the level in there that you're looking for. Then assistant is more like assistant to the game master. Office reference for anyone who likes that one. Not assistant game master, but assistant to the game master. And then of course the top one, game master. There's no higher level. When you're game master, you own and can change everything that's in there. Cool stuff. So in this case, I'm going to do this just so you can see how you end up with the other players. Now I have game master and the player who messes things up. And Jason, for you, I didn't misspell it. I just put up. I was going to put ups, but you know. Feeling generous. Hey, Muffin Bunches, welcome. All right, so here we're back in the world. One of the things you'll notice when it first starts, the game world is paused on the game master side. You can hit the space bar to unpause it. I think for me, at least, where the real benefit comes in there is if you've got the world running and like I do self-hosted, if you've got the world running and you want players to be able to go in and manipulate their characters and stuff, that's great. Go in, change your character sheet. Maybe you got a new weapon between sessions, you learn something, you go and add that to your character sheet. However, when the game world is paused, that player cannot move their character on the screen, nor can they move between scenes within the world. So it is a pause, a literal pause. However, the game master can still go around and do whatever they want, including moving tokens. So it's a cool way to let that world stay up, let your players get in between sessions and mess with the stuff that's in there that pertain to what they own. And then you can still run the world the way you want, keep it paused. And when you come back to it, you know it's in the same state. It's a good thing. I almost always unpause it as soon as I get in it because I don't like that spinny circle thing in front of me. So again, here we are back. Now, what I want to look at a little bit is how we then, let's bring low fantasy gaming into this. How I want to bring that in is mainly starting to look at the character sheets. So I've got newer guy here, and I'm going to shrink this sheet a bit so I can kind of put it side by side with the actor sheet. I should use the word actor where I can, because that's what these literally are in the game system. So under the actors tab on the right hand side behind me here, you can see there is the bandit cultist, the newer guy, and the new guy. Well, when you have things in the game, speaking of, let me show you what it's like to add, or how I added the bandit, because I don't think I did this while we were on the stream last time. I go into the compendium tab, and then you can look at the compendiums, they call it the source books, the materials that are sitting within the system you're playing. Right at the top is actors, because they're sorted by type. And that's what I want. I want an actor, and I want an actor who's a monster. So I went in and I dragged this bandit into the game. Now I'm going to add another thing in here. Let's say, what shall we drag in to the screen? How about something I've never heard of, a Zornling. Let's do a Zornling. So I'm going to take that Zornling, and as you can see, I could drag him right from, I should say drag it, right from this monster's view onto the tabletop. What that does is it creates a token for me, and I'm going to close this monsters window here, and then I'm going to go back to the actors, and you'll see it has also imported the Zornling into my game, into this, I should say, into the world that we're currently in with Foundry. Now I can look at that one and see that character that's on the screen for me. And if you remember last time, I had talked a little bit about the token stuff and how we can change some of the information in this prototype token, and that will then apply to new tokens of the same type. What I want to do here is I want to do a little change. I'm going to always put the health bar on it and update that token. Now, I really don't know how this is going to work because this is an LFG thing that I haven't messed with yet. I'm going to delete the token, close that character sheet, and I'm going to drag out the Zornling again. And actually, there we go. If you can see that there's a health bar. Although maybe, do they not have health? No, health, 0. Yeah, they don't. So let's say this this guy has, well, why not? 10 of 100. And here's where you'll see I'm making a modification to this token. Okay. However, I did not modify the prototype token, which means the next Zornling I drag out does not have that 0 or 10 of 100 because the prototype token had 0 health. Hey, that's a cool thing to me. So I can take, I don't know what Zornling life is like, but say Zornlings travel in packs of 2, but there's always a tall one and a short one. Well, these 2 Zornlings are different now. Even though I can start from the same prototype, I can drag them out, make a minor change to them, and they're now new, quote unquote, new creatures because they no longer match the prototype. It's kind of a neat thing. We have them out there now. We've got the bandit, we've got the newer guy. I was looking, and this is where the learning of the low fantasy gaming starts to come in for me. The character sheet here is very different from the monster sheet. I think we kind of expect stuff like that because in general, the games we play, the monsters usually have a different stat block than a character sheet. For me, at least, it's almost always the monster has a small amount of info and the regular player character has a large amount of info. And Leon's getting larger, but we have the, at least on its face here, the player sheet looks a little more simple. Then I started clicking into it and saw where the complexities start to come in. So let me show you a little bit here. We have the description. All these are free fillable. By the way, they are not wizard driven or anything. I learned that through the low fantasy gaming Discord. I encourage you to find them. I'll probably put a link to it in our thing here. But I learned that it's not wizard driven, which I thought it might have been, which is why I struggled a little more last time. Now that I've learned a little more about what it is and what it isn't, I know that if you want to put a race in here, you just freeform type it. You go to the book, the source book, and then you find the race that you want to play, you type it in. Same thing with background, class, level, etc. Skills is a little different. Skills actually are specific, and you are skilled in something or you are not. Then there's equipment, and you can add, like just earlier before I started up the stream, I created this sword and I gave it a little bit of info. So what I did was something as simple as add weapon, has a new weapon there. I take that new weapon and what kind of weapon is it? So maybe this time I'll just go with a club. It's a melee weapon. It has a short reach, and I want a club to do a, let's call it a D6 of damage. Properties, club, hit hard. And then I close it. And now my dude, newer guy, has a club. Once you've done that, now you've got a rollable item here. So if I go back to my chat window and then I click on the club, you'll see it actually rolls an attack and a damage. And it tells you it hits a certain AC. If I had a target, I believe if I had a target, it would say it attacks something with it. I won't bother with that now because that's going to get too much into the weeds. I'd like to stay as far into the weeds as I currently am, just not deeper. So that's kind of a neat thing. Again, going through these bits, features, something I'm not quite familiar with yet. Spells. I mean, spells are spells, right? The spell system in low fantasy gaming, one of the things I read about it in summary is something I think is kind of neat because they go for gritty gaming, low fantasy, low magic. It's implied that it's a more gritty system. They leave the highest level spells to the monsters, right? So the most dangerous things in the world are not the players. That's kind of cool. Well, maybe they are the players, but not the player characters. Excuse me. And we have these different things on here. Dark and dangerous magic. That sounds cool. I really can't wait to learn more about what that is. But just saying dark and dangerous magic, that's a cool sentence right there. Then other effects, etc. Within character max wiki snappers, I mean, there are people here going to be here that know a heck of a lot more of the system than me because I've gotten 3 pages into the book. But so character can max out at level 12 and can only get up to 6th level magic. Well, that's cool. What is the highest levels? Again, we'll get to that as we get to reading. It is neat, though, to have read in a summary that the most dangerous magic is left up to the world, not in the player character's hands. Pretty cool. So now I'm going to shift over here and look at the Bandit Cultist page a little bit. You can see some of the similarities. So we've got health, we've got armor class. One thing I noticed, and this is me going to take a guess at something first and then find out if it's right after. And this is just based on what I can see. So the term hit dice, to me, that's representing something like relative power / level of the monster. I would not relate it to a CR from Dungeons and Dragons, but what I would say, it seems to affect how strong the monster is. And I say that because I can read this attack roll down here. This attack roll that says when it attacks, it's 1d20 plus the stat of HD. So it's a 1d20 plus 1. So if hit dice is 2, then it's plus 2. If it's 3, it's plus 3. So I'm reading that, again, as an uneducated low fantasy gamer enthusiast. I am looking at, that just means the higher the hit dice of the monster, the higher the chance it has of hitting you. That's kind of cool. And then now I'm looking through here at ability scores. These are all the abilities, the ability, the score, the modifier, etc. Those things, to me, again, they make sense. They're straightforward. This bit here about the description, this is the description in the monster. If you were to create your own NPC, there are spots in there where you can create that bit of info. All right, so Wiki says hit dice bonus maxes at 15. I mean, a d20 plus 15 is a pretty damn good modifier, so that's cool. Let's look at, again, so when I was back, let me go back to the beginning of the character sheet here. When I first opened these up side by side, I was like, wow, the character sheet looks like a monster stat block, and the monster sheet looks like a character sheet to me. But now I've learned a little bit more, and I can say with, you know, more confidence here with what I can see in front of me. The Bandit's sheet does have a fair amount right on this first page, but it's only 1 page. The character sheet has a lot more information. All the attribute stuff, skills, equipment, features, spells, effects, etc. All that stuff that makes you a character rather than a monster. And a monster just has a specific description of what they do. Of course, you role play into that, whatever the heck you want, but they start with that description. And all you're really caring about is how do they attack, what spells do they have, and what abilities do they have that they're good at? What applies to what, when they're doing something that interacts with the player characters, what are the highest numbers? What are they good at to conflict with the player character's goals? And that, so I'm looking at that and I say, hey, that's kind of cool. I can see now that it's a cool sheet, both for player character and for monster, where there's a big delta, a big difference between the low fantasy gaming system and the D&D 5e system is probably similar to their followings, where in the D&D 5e world, there's so many people that follow it, that content and the quality of stuff that the community contributes, it can be higher just by population, just by volume, just by sheer numbers. Eventually, you end up with good stuff. If you've got 1,000 subscriptions and 5% of them are good, then you've got 50 good subscription or submissions there. And if you've only got 10 submissions and 5% are good, well, you don't even have one good one at that point. That's kind of, I think, what I see here, in that if there were a lot more people working on system and module stuff specifically for low fantasy gaming, that would bridge the difference. And that isn't really a gripe. It's just something to know. If you've been using Foundry, as we have, for the D&D 5th edition, and you find all these cool things, and then the character sheet is wizard driven, and you can click this to make this attack, and it has all these macros built in, just know that when you get to the low fantasy gaming sheet, there really aren't rolls to be had on the sheet unless you create them. That attack roll wasn't there until I created it. The monster's attack roll is created. It's a macro sitting there on that sheet. But there aren't things like roll my abilities. You just have an attribute blank box there, and I'm going to roll 4d6, keep the top 3, and do that a number of times, and then apply them to my stats, right? So and I have to go in there and type it. It's old school, fill in the blanks character creation. Again, not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just, it's something to keep in mind. If you've been using this with a system that's more fleshed out with wizards and automatic form fillable stuff, that's a cool thing. All of these things. And another thing I'll mention, again, I'm looking at this visually right now in front of me. The icons, the artwork, the thematic artwork of the low fantasy gaming stuff, I think is so cool. I really like the idea of the basic monochromatic look. You've got, white blobs with black outline, or just black blobs with no needed outline. And those are the things that sit on the screen. I like that. Not only does it make things easily identifiable, but it also makes it so you have the whole imagination thing jump in. When I put the Zornling out here, I have no idea. First off, they're bug aliens to me. And just seeing the icon, but seeing it that basic, tells me, wow, that's I immediately have an idea of what I could do with that character, with that monster, with that look. The bandit slash cultist, this look of the hooded robe is what I see, with just the two eyes peeking out. That immediately shows me they're devious, etc. But it doesn't draw in that this guy is 6 foot with brown hair and, an eye patch. It doesn't need to. It just gives me the opportunity to paint that canvas myself. It's kind of cool. So I want to mention, and did, I guess, that the token artwork is really cool. I love the way it looks. So let me close those things. And now what I want to do is I want to take a little bit of time and read to y'all, maybe some light reading. Let's see, what is on the bookshelf? Oh, hey, look at this. There's a thing called Low Fantasy Gaming. Kind of neat. All right, Wiki just sent something here. Old miniatures were better for imagining. I when it comes to miniatures, so here's another one that I don't really talk that much about it because I don't use them, but I've got a ton of them. If you guys are familiar with the Reaper Bones miniatures, the Kickstarters that they did, I was part of the first one, then I got the expansion, then I got the other. I mean, I literally have about 600 or so just white plastic miniatures of different sizes and all different styles and what have you that they did for years. When I first got some of them in and we were using miniatures a little, I painted some. It was kind of neat. So I took the ones that I considered the DM staples, the pack of rats, the goblins, the zombies, the skeletons, and I started painting those so I could have a decent looking DM throw the monster on the board at the beginning of the game thing. And I realized, of course, if anyone else out there has painted miniatures, you're talking about hours and hours and hours of really fun stuff. But then not using them after, to me, that was the downside. I said, I've spent, I don't know what it was, 25 hours or so painting a group of undead and used them in one adventure, and then we didn't use miniatures. I'm like, oh, well, I'll just put them in the fish box or with all the other stuff. That I just don't bother using them. Same is true with the Dwarven Forge tiles. I've got a bunch of those in the canvas tote bags that they gave out with the Kickstarters, and man, I probably have 100 pounds of Dwarven Forge tiles that we used in one or two of the video sessions of Adventures from the Shed, old YouTube stuff. It is on YouTube, but it goes back, I want to say it's probably 2016 or 2017. Camera, overhead camera at the table, etc. It was really neat to do, but that's the last time I even used those tiles. Anyway, off on that tangent, right? We have all this stuff now, and I feel like making the move to digital, it feels so cool to go in and do all these neat things. And then I think, well, out in the shed, I've got a bookshelf with, I have nowhere near the book collection of most RPG gamers I know. I do have enough, though. So I've got, 20 books on the shelf, systems I had planned on playing in the shed, haven't even played yet. And I'm thinking, how do I use this physical book in the streaming world? And I'm thinking to myself, I'm not. I just don't see that happening. So then I find something like Low Fantasy Gaming. That's actually a good segue for this. In using Foundry, which I found to be such a cool piece of software, I was looking at the systems they had available. I found Dungeon World, Fanboy Dungeon World here. I also saw this one that said Low Fantasy Gaming. Actually, at first I thought it was looking for group because, LFG. But in this case, it was Low Fantasy Gaming. I said, well, it has a system. Heck, I'm just going to download it and I'll start taking a look at it. I did that. Wow. Then I had to tell myself, I need to approach this in a different way because I'm trying to equate it with too many other things. So let's take a look at what it actually is, not what I thought it might be. Props to the Pickpocket Press Low Fantasy Gaming folks, where they took all their backers and made sure they showed up in the book. Cool stuff. I will confess, I was not a backer. I did not know it existed. And I'm sure that Stephen and those at Low Fantasy Gaming know there are so many people going through crowdfunding, which is outstanding when it comes to creating new games, new content, new whatever. It's tough to keep up with that if that's not what you do. And it isn't what I do, so it's tough to keep up with it. I have to essentially I have to get it in an ad from Indiegogo or Kickstarter or something, and it has to catch my eye in the ad. If it doesn't, I'm not looking through to see new things. So here we are, Low Fantasy Gaming. We're going to take a little bit of time and read and absorb. And I think at some point, I'm either going to start to understand it or I'm going to get an expert to help me. Either way, we're going to get started. I love to read through, skim through table of contents to get an idea of how something is structured. One of the things I saw on the Discord server for LFG is somebody mentioning a starter set. Now, granted, they're still working to make sure they get all of the materials out for their backers, and I understand that that means no starter set right away, but it does sound like it might be on the roadmap at some point. To me, reading a table of contents tells me right off the bat, in my world, how this could work as a starter box, as a starter set. And when I'm reading it as, I think it could work, but you'd have to slim it down some. And again, this is an uneducated statement, so take it with a grain of salt. However, I see, what was this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 classes. My starter set should have 3 or 4, and they should be the ones that people can associate with when it comes to the common terminology. Your DPS, your tank, your thief, whatever it may be, and your healer. So you've got your four tropes, your 4 stereotypical classes. And to me, that's the starter set. So I feel like just at first glance, you want to slim some of this down towards a starter set and put the amount of rules in there that are just important enough to get to playing. So again, just looking through it quickly, where it tells you what your attributes are. Unique features. I see it's just a header, so I don't know what it means yet. That's okay. We'll get to that. Things like equipment. I do like this title of doing things. That's pretty cool. Combat, initiative and turn order, things like that in combat. I like the way some of these things sound, which makes it sound like to me, even though this is not a rules light game, it is a the wording is in here. I'll get to it in a minute, but it is less crunch than a full D&D type of thing, but it is not as little crunch as, you know, my Dungeon World preference. So when I read through these different things of initiative and turn order, all right, that's normal. Everyone has that. Delay action, ready action, initiative variance. That sounds normal. Everyone has that. Move and action. Then I see things like martial exploits and fighting styles. To me, in my head, those are kind of the same thing. So where does that come out? And then miscellaneous factors. It's good that all these are called out. Just something that I'm thinking of. It doesn't sound as simple as just saying fighting styles or just saying martial exploits. That's okay. But when I look at it, 73 to 77, there's 4 full pages based on that. Maybe there's some art. I did skim through, and some of the art in here is really darn cool. Injuries and healing. I think that's cool. The idea of the word setbacks being in there. Injuries and setbacks. That's something that I play out in D&D. It's something we just talked about in one of our tavern episodes for Adventures from the Shed. Something that Jason and I have to be editing and get out there soon. But it's mainly around the idea of, in D&D, there is no rule for if you hit a goblin in the arm with a spear, if it makes them drop their shield. That just doesn't happen. But it's something I like to play out. And as a DM, I'll say, you hit him. And especially if someone says, I'm trying to poke him in the arm or something. All right, you hit him in the arm, and I count the damage you do as enough based on what he's got left, that not only did you knock his shield down, but his left arm is relatively useless now, as is my speaking, that now in my accounting for the goblin, his armor class is going to be down by 2, and he's bleeding out. These are things that there aren't any specific rules for, but just seeing the word setbacks in there, I like that. It sounds like there's some accountability for when you do something that isn't just a number of hit points. I like the sound of it. Magic. You can say anything about magic and it sounds simple or complicated because, well, it's a magic, right? Wizard did it. Speaking of, there isn't a wizard here. It's just magic user. Advancement, downtime. That's weird that the section name is advancement and then downtime is under. Those words almost seem contrary to me. GM tools, black powder and ships. So if you want to blow up ships, I suppose. Dungeon room generator sounds cool. Exploration stuff sounds fairly standard. Hirelings. All right, so I'm guessing that is you have either a, reading down a few lines, you either have a pet, like an animal companion type of thing, or you have a human pet. That's kind of neat. Madness. Ooh, I like the sound of madness. Cool. Mass battle. Something large-scale combat isn't accounted for in a lot of systems, so that could be very cool. What do monsters get to do? That looks pretty cool. Morale. Huh. NPC reactions. I'm trying to think back. Was it 2nd edition AD&D? I'm trying to think of the first time I saw a morale table. The monsters have enough bad things happen to them that they have a chance to flee, that type of thing. So that sounds kind of neat. Tavern Brawls. Oh my gosh, that is so cool to have a section just titled Tavern Brawls. Kudos. Traps. Traps are good. Treasure. That's neat. It looks like regular stuff there. Midlands seems like it's a setting. And then we've got some appendices. Cool. All right. So what is low fantasy gaming? This is where I grabbed some of those little sound bites I mentioned earlier. Um, Tabletop RPG built for gritty adventures. Yeah, Ocean Blues. I was thinking of AD&D. I was trying to remember if I actually ever played AD&D or only second, because there was a time where we were stuck on one system because nobody wanted to play the next one. But we played. I mean, my first game was Redbox. I was the fighter, but going back, it was really neat. That that there were things specifically about monsters running away because bad things happen to their teammates, that just doesn't seem to be accounted for much now. And maybe it's just something I haven't read, or maybe it's in some addendum or something in the D&D stuff now that I just don't bother with because I try and stick with the basic stuff. But I've missed it. If it's out there, I've missed it, definitely. Redbox, yeah. Um, there was a thing, we did a online interview with Tribality. This goes back years too. I think this was in 2016. And when he had asked me the question about my experience in tabletop RPG, I realized at that point one of the coolest memories I had was the red box that we had, collectively, because myself and a couple other kids at school pooled our money and got it. But it had the plastic dice where the numbers were just indented, and it included a white crayon, and we had to color in the numbers. And that was like my favorite part. I mean, I'm kind of an art guy with no artistic talent, and it was so cool to do that stuff. And that was one of my favorite memories from like the Redbox days. Cool things. Simple rules. Let's see. We've got simple rules, flexible PC customization, and you can tell this is a crazy foreigner because customization is spelled with a Z or a Z, if you will. You can be forgiven, I suppose, if you made a cool game out of it. And I like the emphasis on games master rulings. That's good because that's where my emphasis is as well. The heady mix of the best old school, modern, and new game design wrapped around a familiar D20 base core. I actually have my D20 shirt of gaming today, so that's appropriate, I suppose. Fast and engaging combat. So this one, when I read this little blurb, I'm like, yeah, I hate switching from exploration mode to combat mode. I feel like the they're the same thing. One is just exploring with your fists, right? And the other is exploring with your feet. And when it comes down to it, why must we go from this nice big free form, explore the world, do whatever the heck you want with an occasional perception check every now and then, to all right, bam, everybody roll initiative, and it's going to be 5 minutes before you get to do something again. That's a shame. So it sounds good. Combat being fast and engaging with minimal waiting between turns. That's great. I like to keep players involved even when it's not their turn. If the monster hits the person whose turn it currently is, I'll turn to the player whose turn it just was and say, some of the blood got splattered on you. How do you feel about that? I like to keep people involved instead of them just sitting and waiting in between. Some of the most frustrating DM moments I had was in a shop running an encounters session for Dungeons and Dragons at a local game store, and there were just, in some cases, there were just too many people at the table. You can't run an effective session, regardless of talent. You can't run an effective session with 9 players at the table. It doesn't happen. And there would be people sitting there knitting between their turns of combat because they had 20 or 30 minutes just waiting and were there for a 4-hour session. So I definitely dislike that. Anything that moves combat forward faster, it's definitely worthwhile, especially if you are exploring with your face. I should probably note that. That might be a good thing to add to some videos at some point. A little exploring with your face. I'll have to put that in there somewhere. Dangerous and gritty. I like the idea that it says is genuinely dangerous. I'm interpreting that as when you're talking about this, you're almost always going to talk about your game in insofar as how it references the big dog. If you want to call it either D&D or Pathfinder, at any given time, it's like the Intel and AMD of the role-playing game. Somebody's got the faster system and somebody's got the more popular system at any given time. I think right now it's still D&D since 5th edition came out. But the idea that D&D, to me, isn't so genuinely dangerous anymore. All right, so I've reduced you to 0 hit points. You've still got like, I don't know what it is, 6 or 7 more rolls most likely before you even know if you're dying. Because each of these death saves get you to roll another death save, get you to roll another death save. It's like, I feel like a death saving throw should be a one-time thing, right? Because you either did die or you didn't die. So that genuine dangerosity just isn't there. I like that this says is genuinely dangerous. Every skirmish takes a toll, and the threat of persistent injury or death is never far away. That sounds cool. I like that idea. Quasi-realistic world. Magic and fantastic monsters exist, but are relatively rare. It's not death saves, it's coma rolls. I like that. I read that as comma rolls, and it's true because it's a pause, right? You're not really dying, you're pausing before you see if you're going to die. Coma, comma, it works. Treacherous magic. So magic's not only rare, but it's perilous and uncertain. That's kind of neat too. Adventurers engage with magic at their own risks. Cool. LFG is about exploring the unknown, delving into the lost places of the world to unearth new mysteries. I guess people are tired of the old mysteries. That's cool. Player, I think I probably said that's cool like 500 times tonight, most likely. So the player characters are not epic heroes charged with saving existence. They're bold adventurers seeking fortune and glory. I like that idea as well. Open sandbox. Oh my gosh, that is so me. I put the sand in sandbox. I don't even know what that means. What's that guy talking about? I don't know. It's something weird. Mechanics and random tables support GM improvisation. I like that. I normally don't think much about a random table supporting my improvisation, although my improvisation is indeed random in some manner. That's neat. Generic rule set. That's all, again, also a good thing. And if you talk about the things that were up here, like simple rules, open sandbox, what was the other one? The quasi-realistic type of thing. When you put all those together, it does make sense that the rule set should be generic enough to accommodate these different things that come up. All right, so this is just a little bit more about it. So it's a D20 based with 9 classes. I suppose I counted them earlier. If I'd bothered to scroll down half a page, I would have just seen the number. So we've got 9 classes, only 2 of which involve magic. 12th level max eliminates the most powerful spells and keeps the mightiest monsters scary. It's kind of cool. There's another cool. Unique feature, so every 3rd level, design your own PC ability in conjunction with your GM or choose from 36 examples. Now that is very cool. I feel like there's so many times that the character's evolving and the player wants to do something that isn't part of the character they have. Enter the needlessly complicated world of multiclassing. I don't want a multiclass. Just let my fighter have a wolf pet. I don't want to be a ranger. I just want to be a fighter that has a wolf. Right? I don't make me take something different because I just want one special thing. Good example in our audio podcast right now, our fighter he had the desire to have come from a magical sorceress background, but not be a sorcerer, not multiclass. I told him, well, heck, as you start off as your fighter, as we build this character, take one thing that is in the fighter, take it out, and replace it with one thing that's in the beginning sorcerer. And so I think he switched it for a cantrip. I can't remember exactly what he did, but we've used it in the podcast. And that's the kind of thing to me that this reads as a unique feature. Wolf can be a companion. Are we talking about LFG there for a wolf being a companion? Because that's different. If so, I don't know. I'm not sure about in D&D. I was just using an off-the-cuff example of something that I would bitch about because, well, I did. Roll equal or under for attribute checks. Equal or under. Huh. So you're not rolling to beat, you're playing golf? You need a lower number? Interesting, okay. Skills provide access to a level-based reroll pool. Smoothing the fickleness of D20 probability distribution. That is something that has been complained about by numbers folks for years. I'm sure you folks have heard the arguments of a D20 is just way too random to represent a skilled creature, whether it be a character or even a monster. I mean, a werewolf bites and they claw. So why is it such a random chance of them actually hitting? And a D20 is way random. So enter things like advantage, disadvantage, which really helps pull that together. Maybe in kind of an over or underpowered-ish fashion, depending on how you read it. But you start to mess with things like that. And I'm very curious how reroll pool plays into that to smooth the fickleness of the D20 probability distribution. That could be my favorite sentence so far in this book. Smoothing the fickleness of D20 probability distribution. That's so poetic. Willpower and perception attributes replace wisdom. Not sure how I feel about that yet. I'll have to see it in practicality. I hardly ever think of two things replacing one and having it be better. I'm all about simplify. But I haven't seen it. I'll have to see. That's what have to see means if you haven't seen. Diminishing luck attribute replaces saving throws and powers some martial exploits. So luck is a consumable resource, is what I gather here, because it's diminishing. Major and minor rescue exploits on top of damage, not in lieu, promote improvised stunts and moments of greatness. So the end of that, promoting the improvised stunts and moments of greatness, sounds awesome. Since I don't know what minor, major, and rescue exploits are, it's hard to understand what the beginning of that statement means so far. In dangerous combat, dropping to 0 hit points requires a roll on injuries and setbacks tables. Again, I just love the sound of setbacks. Nobody in D&D treats injuries real, and that's just, it's a shame. Having an eye patch, having a permanent scar, losing fingers, breaking a knee or something like that. It's something that I think really adds to the game that we miss all too often. Like, the PC is all dead or mostly dead. That's awesome. There should be a not quite dead yet in there. Party retreat and chase rules allow the GM to throw whatever makes sense at the party, unshackling them from balanced counters and quarantine zones. It's an interesting thought. What else we got here? I'm going back up to the other part. 5-minute short rest allows PCs to attempt willpower checks to recover hit points. Neat. So it's like a quick breather. What is that? In the D&D board games, which I got all of them and have only played 2 of them once, the second wind, the way they use that, the second wind token, sounds like it would be the 5-minute short rest equivalent. Long rest take 1d6 days. That's kind of neat. So you're automatically forced into a certain amount of time to recover, which, to me at least, makes the injury and setback more realistic. I'm just reading that, mitigating the Nova rest repeat problem for adventures with long periods between battles. I'm not sure I read that sentence the way it's intended, but I get the idea of long rests. Cool. And them being not only a definitely long period, but something that could be up to, 600 times longer than the shortest long rest. Do that math. Dark and dangerous magic. I still love the sound of that. I'm guessing at some point that's going to be abbreviated to DDM in here. I don't want it to be abbreviated, saying dark and dangerous magic. I'll probably say that every time I play this. No at-will, teleport, mind reading, or resurrection magic. Bam! Suck it. Evocative spells. Silent image, invisibility, magic missile, hold monster are instead shadows and dust, a wisp unseen, lash of unerring pain. Ow! I guess that's magic missile. Oof. Rare magic. Oh, it's abbreviated, man. Oh well, I'll live. Somehow I'll manage. Host of GM tables. I always like the idea of tables, but I'm gonna go click back in Foundry here. I'm gonna guess they're not there. Damn it. Nope. Oh, hold on. I gotta look in the compendium. Are there tables in here? Rollable tables. Hey. Are any of those things in there? They didn't abbreviate it in here. Dark and dangerous magic. Yeah, it looks like some of them are in there. What was the wording again? It says weather, traps, treasure, exploration. Yeah, I'm gonna say some of that's in there. Like, what is a rollable swamp table? Hell if I know, right? Swamps. So it's a D20. Oh, yeah, okay. Because I would say if it's not in Foundry, I'm probably not going to use that table. So I'm really happy to see it's in Foundry. Although I could possibly create that because I do kind of understand tables. Where is this? Import. Where's the roll? Sometimes I just don't understand. Oh, here it is at the bottom. Roll. What'd I end up with? Wow, I don't even know what those words mean, but that's cool. So and I had the Zornling selected, so the Zornling made this roll, not me. That's really neat. I'm looking forward to using that. Definitely looking forward to using those tables. Some of my really fun memories going back with one-shot games is based around a completely random game from the DM's perspective. I'd mentioned the dice I have. I roll, just the dungeon is randomly generated step by step. Really neat. Every encounter is from a random encounter table, and the disjointed feel of some of those sessions can be so much fun to look back on. They definitely don't fit a story arc, and that can be frustrating if you're trying to do a whole lot of random within a story arc. But if you take a one-shot session and say everything in this session is going to be random, it's going to come from a table, nobody knows what it's going to be until that die stops rolling. That could be a really cool thing to try here, especially if there's enough automation in Foundry to make it run smooth. That could be pretty cool. That may actually be something I try as one of the early things with LFG in Foundry, so that we don't necessarily have to have a story and a lot of maps. We could just put out a few combat maps and a few towns and say, hey, we're just going to go random from here. That could be pretty cool. But I do like that. A lot of GM tables. I did not know that LFG was in Roll20, although I have stopped using it. I own Fantasy Grounds, but haven't installed it on my last 3 or 4 computers. So, meh. It happens to be in Foundry, my current virtual tabletop infatuation. So I'm going to take a couple of more minutes here looking through these. I certainly hope you guys are finding it as enjoyable to listen to me be enjoyed by this as it is for me to actually read it, because I don't want to just jump into how do I make a character. I want to know what the game's about before I roll my first stat. And hopefully that's helpful to others as well, or at least entertaining, even if it doesn't help. So the basics, this is your usual, the basics of an RPG. You've got the game master. And I like the idea that it's said as games master. I like that. There are other games like the Fate types, I think they are, that call them Master of Ceremonies or MCs. And you get different names and different things. I think this is the first time I've seen Games Space Master. So that's kind of neat. Where we got? So that's the normal stuff. The PCs play, or the players control the PCs or the important actors within the world, or as it says, central protagonists in something like a novel, TV show, or movie. And it sounds like the grittiness here sounds more like I'm just going to the movie aspect. It's more like a Star Wars kind of grittiness where the Force is the only really magical thing, and everything else is kind of that grittiness. Or for that matter, the Lord of the Rings movies, mainly because there is magic, but the magic is kind of limited. I mean, what does Gandalf do? Shoot light at people. Not a whole lot there. And he breaks stone bridges. Kind of neat. But that grittiness is kind of cool. There's another cool. I should have a cool counter. Ding. GM Steve. Oh, that's a plus. I'm guessing Steve did that on purpose. I wonder if Tom and Jessica are people he knows or people who supported the project. I'm going to skip over that part because, well, I'm being entertaining enough without having to pretend I'm two other people, or three. So we have the several kind of dice. It looks like we have the full set of standard 7 RPG dice, because even the D100 is in here. So that's pretty cool. Another cool. Bang. Some more of that art. Nice shot there. There is the guy who is definitely not Conan. And now we get up to the creating a character part. So I want to save this one. I think we'll probably wrap this up here. I want to get into creating a character in Foundry, and I think I need a little bit more cohesiveness there to make it a useful session. But gosh, I'm just going through some of the basics here, seeing how it might match up with the way Foundry is going to treat it, and then how it might turn out in the stream itself. This is some pretty cool stuff. I'm looking forward to it. I'll definitely keep up with the LFG Discord server as much as I can. I've started posting a little bit on there. And the video, after I do a little bit of editing, these will end up on YouTube, and I'll put links out there. But I'm trying to keep this specific behind the stream thing I mean, I guess technically it's planned, but it's less planned than any of our actual game sessions or any of our actual sidebar sessions. This is going to be a lot about me just exploring something on a stream and seeing if people are interested in continuing it. So guys, just let me know here, Discord, wherever. Our website, adventuresfromtheshed.com, Adventures from the Shed on YouTube, AFTS Podcast on Twitter. I mean, all those links out there. I find actually, although I hadn't really used Discord in the past, it's kind of a nice front page, if you will, on Discord. If you're looking at somebody's channel, you see where they are in different places. That's kind of neat, depending on if they've set it up. We did that. I've had some really good help with folks out here. So yeah, I'm gonna finish this one up. You guys let me know how things are going. Suggest this, wherever you can find it, to like it, subscribe, follow, what have you. Thank you for the folks that are following here on Twitter now. I'm going to try and keep a regular cadence of doing this maybe twice a week. Let me know if there's anything specific that you might want to see or hear about. There was a mention last time about how I brought up a couple of things in Foundry that people hadn't known. That's cool. I want to keep doing that. If you have a question about something, I'll try to learn it before I do the next stream so I can help out. We'll keep it up in that respect. For now, we're going to continue with Foundry and learning about the low fantasy gaming system so that I can then get this thing set up to be part of the Adventures from the Stream live stream. In the meantime, I'm going to wrap this up, and we will see you guys next time.